There we go.
Testing, testing.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to our second colloquium of the academic year. We are going to be listening to Dr. Karyn Gomez talk to us about education in Finland, the happiest country in the world. Karyn Gomez earned her doctorate at Texas A&M University Commerce in 2005 and joined the faculty at EOU in 2006. Her research interests and presentations include literacy and teacher education. She has taught in the undergraduate and graduate teacher preparation programs and the Master of Science program in the College of Education. She also served as the Director of Educator Preparation for several years before returning to full-time teaching in the college. Prior to her experience in higher education, she taught at the elementary level for 18 years in a variety of public and private schools in Washington and Texas. While on leave from the university in 2017 and 2018, she taught 6th grade at an international dual language school in Mexico. Karyn was on sabbatical and spent time in Finland during the 2022-2023 academic year working on projects related to faculty-led study abroad and learning about the Finnish education system and teacher preparation program at the University of Jyväskylä. Did I get it?
Pretty close.
Good enough for me. She plans to continue her work on learning the Finnish language to enhance her ability to learn more about Finnish culture, teacher preparation, and schooling. Welcome, Karyn.
Hei kaikki. Hyvä päivä. Tervetuloa. Minun nimi on Karyn Gomez. That's about all you're going to get in Finnish today, and I'll tell you why later. But I have welcomed you, I've told you good day, and I've given you my name. And that works. So I'm going to struggle my way through some of our Finnish pronunciation today as I'm speaking about different places, so please just bear with me. But I'm planning to have a good time with this because I had a great time in Finland. So let's talk about this. I went to Jyväskylä in Finland. And I went there because I wanted to do a couple of things. I wanted to learn more about the Finnish school system and the teacher preparation programs that were available there. I also wanted to develop partnerships to explore the possibility of a study abroad opportunity for teacher candidates in particular, because I think it would be fascinating for our students to see the school system in Finland. So why Finland of all places? It's far away and cold, right? Yeah, it is far away. It's a very long flight, but you get to stop in Iceland, and that's pretty cool. It is cold most of the year, but that's why my first trip, I planned it in August, September, and October. It was beautiful. Also, that happened to coincide with the beginning of the school year, so I thought that would be appropriate. So yes, it is there, but it is cold, it is far away, but why do I want to go there? It's consistently rated in the top school systems internationally by a variety of agencies on a variety of variables, including things like international test scores on the PISA test and things like literacy rate, which happens to be 100% in Finland, and other things like how many years of school people on average finish. I also happen to have family connections there. I have distant cousins who live in Finland, and I have met them over the last several years, and we've become acquainted. And I've discovered through my conversations with my cousins that I had some cousins that were highly connected in the education world, which I thought would be great. The husband of one of my cousins was from 1995 to 2005, was actually the Director General of the Finnish Board of Education. Worked in the Ministry of Education and Culture, and so did my cousin. So I also have cousins who are recently retired, and I have cousins who are still teaching in education in school systems there. So I felt like those connections would really be great. The other thing is, it is the happiest country on earth for the 6th year in a row, according to the World Happiness Report, which is based on data from Gallup poll and some other things. There's a reference at the back if you want to look up more on the World Happiness Report. Plus, why is it the happiest country in the world, and why might someone want to go there? Let's just look at this. Who wouldn't want to go to Finland? This was on my daily walks, and I lived in a city, just FYI. There is wilderness all around because that outdoors and outdoor activities are a value. They're also known for reindeer. Santa Claus lives in Finland, in case you didn't know that. He does not live at the North Pole. He lives in Finland. There are lots of parks. And this picture on the far right is the church that was right across the street from where I was living. And it's all lit up because at the end of the summer season and as we're moving into fall and right before the dark of winter, because they have very dark and long days in winter, they have a celebration of light to welcome the darkness. And there is a path about 3 miles long where you can find all kinds of lit buildings, vegetation, sculptures, all sorts of things. And that was one of the very last things I did before I came back home, is I did that 3-mile walk over a course of 2 days because it was raining the whole time. And it was one of the most profound experiences I've ever had, seeing all of that beautiful light in celebration of the coming darkness. And it was their way to begin that so they could make it through the darkness. These are some other shots from just hanging around where I lived. I was in what's known as the lake region of central Finland. I don't know how many lakes there are, but enough to be happy. This picture on the top left shows, you can see it's a lake and there are trees there and there's a pathway. There's a path that goes all the way around the lake that is on the south end of Jyväskylä. And there is another lake on the north end of Jyväskylä, and you can walk between the two lakes in a day easily because it's, you could walk around both lakes if you, the South Lake if you wanted to, plus much of the Northern Lake if you wanted to. It's about a mile between the two lakes. It's beautiful. So today's agenda, what did I learn? What did I do? What did I learn? And what now? And then any questions if we have time for that. Somebody might need to cut me off because I am in love with where I was and we'll talk about it all day. So what did I do? I did language learning and cultural learning in person while I was there. I happened to find this photo when I was doing a Google image search, and it was on the Facebook page for the place where I did my language learning. And the woman who's on the right, squatted down, that's Hanna-Kaisa, and she was my main teacher. And the other two were helpers in the classroom, so it was really fun to see people I knew. And I put them up there because they were part of my language learning. I took in-person classes 2 or 3 times a week, depending on the week, at the place that is called Monikulttuuriskeskus Gloria. Gloria is easier, so that's what I call it. And that is the multicultural center, literally translated multicultural center, Gloria. I also, when I came home from Finland, I was in Finland for 3 months, August, September, October. I took lessons all that time. And when I came home, I continued with my language learning by taking online courses through the University of Helsinki, and I took those classes from November through June. And I haven't taken a class since June, which is why some of this is hard to come back at this point. What else did I do? I took those classes to help myself learn more about language and culture, but I also studied at the University of Jyväskylä and under their what we call their open university. I'll talk more about that later. I took a series of 5 courses to learn more about the education system. Each of these courses was a different part of the education system, and the first one, called Educational Leadership, is a introduction to the Finnish education system, and it's called Educational Leadership because they believe that anyone who works within the education system in Finland needs to be a good leader. So they're all leaders. I then took the next course. I went in chronological order by age, of course. I started with early childhood education and care, basic education, upper secondary, and then higher education and adult education. I also was trying to create those networks so that I could try to go back again with students, because that will be my crowning achievement if I can make that happen. And so I went to the University of Jyväskylä, Department of Teacher Education. And I did that for a couple of reasons. One is the cousin that I spoke with, who had spent time in the Ministry of Education and whose husband had been the director of the Finnish Board of National Education. He had worked with a man named Jouni Valijari, and she suggested, well, why don't you contact Jouni? He'll help you find people to talk to. So I did. I emailed him 4 times. And he finally responded to me. And he's like, oh, that's great, but I'm retired now. Thank you very much. Why don't you talk to this other person who's still working there? So he directed me to Sirpa Eskala Happanen. And she is the head of the Department of Teacher Education, which would be similar to a dean here. And we had multiple email conversations back and forth. And she decided that maybe the best person I could talk to was Eija Aalto, who is the vice head of the Department of Education. So I emailed with Eija, and then we finally had the opportunity to meet for coffee. Coffee is a big thing in Finland. Anytime you do anything with anyone socially, it's always over coffee. So we met at her place of work in her building on the campus, and we spoke for quite some time, and she talked to me about the teacher preparation program, what it's like to be a faculty member in the program, what it means, how long it is. She gave me a lot of general information, but she thought maybe I would want to talk to Emma Kostiainen. Of course I did. And Emma is a senior lecturer, which would be equivalent probably to a full professor here. And Emma is not a teacher. Emma is a person whose specialty is communication. So she teaches in the Department of Teacher Education, but she teaches communication. And the way she focused her teaching was on teaching the teacher candidates how to work with cross-curricular, multidisciplinary projects. And she would get the students out into schools to do those kind of multidisciplinary projects. And then through one of the courses that I was taking, I met a student named Heidi Katz. She's not Finnish. She's actually an American who is a teacher from the East Coast, and she was finishing a doctorate in Finland at a university that has a Swedish name, and I don't know how to say it. My best guess, after listening to it on Google, was Åbo Akademi, but I don't really know. But it's in Swedish because Swedish is one of the national languages of Finland, and it's on some islands that used to belong to Sweden, and so that university is where this teacher was working on her doctorate, and we had a really interesting conversation about what she saw from her perspective as both an American teacher and a person studying education in Finland. So that's what I did. I also did some public school networking. So I went to a place called Kuokkalan Yhtenäiskoulu, which is also in English Kuokkala Unified School, which is easier. I was introduced to Paula Oksanen by one of the teachers at one of the university faculty members at Jyväskylä University, which they abbreviate there as JYU. We're going to go with that. So I was introduced to Paula by Emma, and Paula is a teacher in a preparatory classroom, and it is a classroom specifically created for non-Finnish speaking students. Most of them were immigrants, and at that time, many of them were from Ukraine. I also was introduced to the principal of the University of Jyväskylä Training School by Emma, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And I also contacted 2 other public schools that were not associated with JYU. This picture of the school here is actually the school where I spent some time with Paula and her students. So what did I learn? Finnish is hard. Finnish is hard. What else did I learn? So let's talk first about the school system. And because Finnish is hard, that's not why I'm talking about what I learned in my language classes. Let's talk in a couple of years. But I'm going to start with the Finnish school system. And some of this I'm going to read word for word because I've taken information from places that represent the Finnish system. And this is from the Finnish National Agency for Education. Finland's education system is focused on equity and has an emphasis on providing quality education to all students, regardless of location or socioeconomic background. And in real life, that translates into every neighborhood school is supposed to be a good school. And there are very few private schools there. And if there are private schools, the tuition is, if there is tuition, it's partially subsidized by the government, simply because the private schools still have to do the national curriculum. They have the same requirements as the public schools. Okay, from here on out, I'm just going to tell you at this moment, when I start talking about this slide and you have a little bit of cognitive dissonance because you're trying to figure out what that picture has to do with it, I'll just tell you straight up, nothing. I just took so many cool pictures when I was over there that I wanted to share. So you're going to find a picture on every slide that may or may not be connected to the content of the slide. This is a building, a multi-story building. I'm guessing that one's probably about 5 stories. And many, many, many of the buildings in the town where I lived have these huge murals on them. And so that was one of them. I thought it was cool. That's why it's there. All right, so in one of the classes that I took in basic education, one of the online classes that I was taking through the University of Jyväskylä, these were 3 of the basic principles of education that were shared with us in class. And I want to read them because I quoted them directly in my notes, and this is exactly what was said. In slower English, because I was able to take those courses in English, thank goodness. Each pupil has the right to grow into his or her full potential as a human being and as a member of society. Discussions of values with students guide them to recognize values and attitudes they encounter as a member of society. The mission of basic education is to promote equity, equality, and justice. You don't hear math, science, social studies, reading in here, and I'm going to show you why in just a minute. But those are the basic principles, 3 of the fundamental principles that they have for basic education. There's a playground on this slide. There are probably 3 or 4 other playgrounds in these slides somewhere because playgrounds are everywhere, because play is valued. Children are allowed to, encouraged to, and expected to play. Play a lot and play outside. So in the public schools, there are services that are provided to all students. Transportation if needed. Most schools are within walking distance for kids. But if it's not, then they are provided with transportation. There is tiered student support, meaning that special education services, supplemental interventions, gifted curriculum, whatever they need, all those things are provided for students based on what they're ready to handle. And one of the things that really struck me about the system is that special education isn't a room off in the corner where they go. Special education is as soon as a teacher notices that there's something that might need a little extra help, they call in the team and they provide services for the student in the classroom at that moment to supplement their education so that they can remain within that classroom and still be doing the curriculum that they need to do. As soon as that student has met that goal, whatever it is, then those services are pulled away until they need it again, if they need it again. And the assumption that I heard from the teacher candidates, from the faculty, and from the teachers is that every student at some time is going to need a little extra help with something. So we're just prepared to give that in whatever form that might be, in whatever form that might take. For those students who may have severe disabilities, yes, there is more support through a specific special education program created for them. But this fact of swoop in, provide the support needed, swoop back out, and let the kids be successful that way was really fascinating to me. They also have wellness services, including health care and mental health care that are provided at school. Every child receives free meals while at school, and after-school activities must be provided by schools that service kids that are in grades 1 and 2. Because in grades 1 and 2, after school, the kids need a safe place and a healthy place to be until their parents can pick them up if their parents are working. Many schools provide activities for grades 3 and up, and sometimes they work with the municipality, the city, and provide joint activities. And so there's almost always something for children to do after school. It's just mandatory by law for just the 1st and 2nd grade. This is the National Core Curriculum. Now, there are a lot of documents about the National Core Curriculum that explain the details. I couldn't read them because I couldn't find them in English. And when I tried to translate them, not helpful, because Google Translate was not a good tool for that. So I have this, which I do know is accurate, and this is, has been translated. This is in English. And this is the framework for their National Core Curriculum. This framework, if you'll notice, the subjects are around the outside of the circle because the subjects are the vessel for teaching the really important stuff, which they have inside the circle. They believe that every child should be taught how to think critically, and know how to learn. In their national curriculum, they expect that the children will understand their own culture, the cultures of others who are there with them, and be free to express that culture and interact with others from other cultures. They believe in life skills, being able to take care of oneself, managing your own daily life. Multiliteracy, which in this case, I did not get a really good translation to know exactly what that encompasses, but I'm assuming reading, writing, speaking, listening. But I also assume it means multi-languages, because there are at least 3 languages for every person in the country. They learn in at least 3 languages. Digital competence, not only being able to consume information, but also being able to produce information digitally. Working life competence, being able to be a worker, and entrepreneurship are also a part of the curriculum. And participation involvement in building a sustainable future. That means becoming a good citizen, knowing what your civic duties are, being able to contribute to your society. So those are the things. In Finnish, the direct translation is transversal skills or transversal competencies, but this one was translated as development as a human being and as a citizen. So the subjects are not in the center of the circle. The subjects are what they use to teach those things that they think are important. And I can't give you a deeper dive on this because I can't read all that information at this point. So this is what I know, but it's very different from our Common Core state standards for those of you in ed. It's not Common Core. This picture here is just walking by one of the apartment buildings in Jyväskylä, and they have these little bike sheds everywhere because most people bike when they can or walk. There is traffic in the city. It's a city of about 140,000 people maybe, but it's mostly walkers and bikers, and rollerbladers and electric scooterers, and in the winter it was skiers. This was at a playground just near where I lived, and I want to talk about this with early childhood because really the focus in early childhood is children being able to take care of themselves, gaining autonomy, and playing and resting. And early childhood education and care is provided for children birth through age 6. The child care is subsidized in the sense that it's like a sliding scale fee for parents to pay for child care. Most children don't start child care till they're age 1 or older. Because in Finland, and I don't have the current information, but it's several months worth of family home time with their children. So maternal leave, paternal leave, family leave is several months. And it can be done mother and father together. If there are 2 parents in the family that share that, one can do it for part of the time, another can do it for another part of the time. Also, the thing about the family leave is that it is paid and benefited. They're continuing to earn their pay and their health benefits and other social benefits that they have during that time. Once children go to child care or daycare, they can stay there through age 6 as part of the early child care system. And when they reach the age of 6, they enter what they call pre-primary or pre-primary education, which is the year before they start compulsory school at grade 1. And that's about half of a day per day. And that part of the day, parents don't pay for because education is free. So the compulsory education is what they call basic education. And that consists of primary grades and what they call lower secondary. So basically about grades 1 through 9. These are not exact equivalents to our system, but about grades 1 through 9. In basic education, there are language minimum requirements. In those grades, you learn Finnish and Swedish and 1 foreign language. And most students take English, so many people in Finland speak English. You can get around pretty well. There is another language called Sami, and it is an indigenous language in the north part of Finland, in the Lapland area with the Sami people. And if your child is Sami, they are entitled to their education in their native tongue of Sami. And then they also learn Swedish and Finnish. In general, upper secondary is divided into 2 pathways. One is general, and one is vocational education. So the children make a decision which direction they think they want to go. If they choose to go general, upper secondary, it's approximately 3 years to get through. They get extensive general knowledge, and they come out ready for further studies, for example, going to university. There's a culminating exam. Instead of yearly exams, there's one exam in Finland, and it happens at the end of general upper secondary, and that is used, the national matriculation exam is used for college admission. They have to pass that to be able to go into university. Vocational education is also approximately 3 years, and in that, it's applied skills, so more what we would call CTE here. They learn a trade, they can be certified in different skills, but it takes about 3 years to get through vocational education. And kids do choose which way they want to go, but they can also switch back and forth. There's no, it's not a dead end. If you decide you want to do this, but then later you change your mind, you can go over here. So they have this option. So that's the upper secondary. And then finally, the higher education system. There are two types of universities. One is a university like we might consider it, except that it is only based on research and providing education around the research that the faculty do. That's what the universities do. They do have teacher education, but it's research. There's a large research component to that. Universities provide bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and postgraduate degrees like doctoral degrees, or things like professions that need a specific professional license. The universities of applied sciences provide practical education based on the labor market, what kind of skills, trades, jobs are needed, and they offer bachelor's and master's degrees. But you cannot do a master's degree at a University of Applied Science unless you have completed your bachelor's and have completed 2 years of work in your field of study before you go into your master's. And then the Finnish adult school system, adult education. Finns are proud of the fact that what they say there are no dead ends in education. They believe in lifelong learning, and even adults go back to school for different things. There's formal training in universities and universities of applied sciences and in workplaces, but then there's informal opportunities for education like what I've done. Most universities have what they call open university, where you can apply to take courses at that university, but those courses won't go towards a degree. All the coursework that I've taken doesn't go towards any particular degree, but I could take those classes. Anyone can take classes, and they're cheap. My education course sequence of courses didn't cost me a cent, and my language courses cost me 15 euros per credit. In each of my classes was 3 credits. Everyone has the right to participate in education, and there are adult education centers like the Multicultural Center I attended. There are lots of places to go learn, and they say there are no dead ends. You never stop learning. I also went to Kuokkalan Yhtenäiskoulu and worked with Paula, and in her classroom, it was a multi-age preparatory classroom, kids from around the world, many of them from Ukraine. Every child that comes into Finland's school system that does not speak Finnish has a 1-year transition period in this preparatory classroom. They learn Finnish in that time. They learn the school system and the culture. They learn how to integrate with other students who are Finnish speaking, and they go to work with other students in activity courses like PE, and then the mandatory 7th grade class that in the olden days we would have called home ec, but they all learn how to cook and they all love that class. And then they are with other kids, the native Finnish speakers, during lunch and all breaks. And during content coursework, if they're particularly advanced in a particular subject, they can go to that content area coursework out in one of the other classrooms, and they go there with a paraprofessional who provides the language support with them so that they can meet those expectations in that content area. And also children that come to Finland and speak other languages, if there are at least 4 kids in a school that speak the same language, the school hires a teacher to teach them literacy in their mother tongue. And every hour that they spend doing that, which is usually once or twice a week for a couple hours after school, they take that away from the other time they're in school, because play and rest are important. So they don't add hours of school to them. They make those literacy lessons part of their regular school hours, or to meet the same number of hours. Also, I want to teach in Finland. Every lesson is considered an hour, but of that hour, 45 minutes is instruction, and the 15 minutes is break, because kids need break. So do adults. What did I learn about teacher preparation? Admission is competitive. Depending upon which university you're trying to apply to, between 10 and 16% of applicants who want to be teachers are admitted. At University of Helsinki, 10, 11 maybe. It's a 5-year program to become a teacher. It takes 3 years to get a bachelor's degree, and then 2 years to do your master's degree. And there is a large research component in that 5-year program. There are research and clinical components to the program, and each university that offers teacher education has a training school where all clinical practices are completed. So a school that goes from grade 1 to grade 9, that's basic education, and they also have upper secondary schools where all teachers who are training at that university, they all work in that school. On the university side, there is a focus on research, all faculty research. So when I showed up and I said, hey, I want to learn about, they were like, okay, so do you have a permit for research? Well, I'm not doing a research study right now. I'm just trying to learn and explore and find out some stuff. Oh, we don't know what to do with you. So that was one of the challenges I had, is that research for me is going to come after I get to that point where if I can get students over there to Finland, there's where I'm going to build my research. But I was not researching at this point with a study, and they really didn't know what to do with me. The faculty teach educational theory, and faculty are not necessarily practitioners. Supervision of clinical experiences, so going to watch the student teachers, is not part of faculty load or pay. They don't do it. If they do it, they're doing it on their own time out of the goodness of their heart, but they don't really see a reason to do that. Because in the teacher preparation schools, that's where all the clinical experiences happen, and the teachers at the training school are university employees, but they are not faculty members. And it's almost like never the twain shall meet. They don't interact with the faculty. Teachers at the training school are responsible for supervision of clinical experiences and mentoring teacher candidates. Here in the United States, we have a gap between theory and practice in education, where what we learn in the university doesn't always get down to what they do in practice in the schools. I thought our gap was bad. Over here, it's a chasm, that there just isn't that communication. Okay, here's a surprise. Some of the students who go for a master's degree in education are never planning to teach. But that's because that degree is valuable. Teachers and people who are trained as teachers are sought after, and they are very, very well respected. So students who complete a master's degree are qualified to do all kinds of things. You can apply for a different kind of job, a lot of different jobs, because the skills you've learned as a teacher in training are good for whatever business it is or whatever they want to do. And I also found out, which was very surprising to me, that students who complete a master's degree, they can go right into a doctoral program without any experience. And then if they finish the doctoral program, they can go ahead and teach right there in the College of Education or in the Department of Education, and they've never taught in the classroom in their lives. So that part was like really eye-opening for me. But that's because the focus is not on clinical education in the university setting. I wanted to create partnerships to work on a study abroad opportunity, and I discovered that networks were not as open as I anticipated, and name dropping didn't get me very far. I tried really hard, but I've also learned culturally that bragging and, which I wasn't trying to do, I was just trying to drop names, bragging and bringing attention to yourself is not part of what they want you to do. So when I said, well, my cousin is, we were like, okay, that's nice, but. So I didn't open the doors the way I was anticipating. There was also a mismatch between expectations, which I've already mentioned, where they, as a faculty member, particularly when I go as a full professor, they're like, oh, what's your research? What are you doing for research? Do you have your permit? Because you have to apply for a permit to research. And they have many, many visiting scholars from all over the world that come and stay for a year or two at their university and do research. And when I wasn't they really didn't know how to handle that. I found out that I had to meet with people in person. The language barrier, well, is a challenge. It's not necessarily a barrier, because I was able to do everything I needed to do because people do speak English, but my lack of Finnish was pronounced and clear, particularly in written communication or telephone communication. That didn't go well. So I needed to see people in person. I need to continue to build that trust, and it's a slow process, and I want to do that with more learning, more about the culture and more about language skills, so that maybe even if I can't write an academic paper in Finnish, if I can write an email in Finnish that's grammatically correct, I think that will go a really long way. And creating a clear process for faculty-led student study abroad is an ongoing process that's been complicated by a lot of things. And as I say, the best laid plans. And here's one of the reasons why, another challenge, why I didn't quite get what I needed to do. I planned to go back in March, but my daughter had her baby in February, which was about 3 months earlier than he was anticipated. And so the first picture is then in February when he was first born, and then this is now. He's doing well, and he is a chunk, so that's all good. But that was one of the reasons why I didn't go back. I hoped to go back in March, but I got rerouted to Houston. Not my favorite place. It's not at all like Finland. But Houston was where I have made multiple trips since February, back and forth. So I did not have the opportunity to go back to Finland. So what does that mean, and where do we go from now? So now what? On my study abroad goal, I need to continue to develop my networks in Finland. I have a school, I have a teacher that I think I'm going to be able to be okay with over time. I need to enroll in language classes again. I need to explore more open university options to add to my understanding of the system. I need to collaborate with DEIB and other departments here to help develop an accessible and consistent process for faculty to plan and lead study abroad, because I've gone to Mexico 3 times with students, and it has been close to a nightmare every time for me and for our COM in our College of Education and for others. So I'd like to find a way to create a flowchart, a process, a checklist, something so faculty can take students abroad, and there's a clear way to do that because it was different every time I took students to Mexico. And finally, I think I need to go back to Finland. It just seems like that's right. And now, in terms of this, I pulled this quote from that class. The mission of basic education is to promote equity, equality, and justice. And what does that mean? And what did all that time I had over there mean for me? And honestly, I'm still processing it. I don't really have answers. I have more questions. And I really want to know what I learned from Finland. What does it mean in our cultural context? We're not the same. We don't have the same cultural values. We don't have the same experiences. And so what they do there, if I say, oh, that's awesome, I'd love to do that, it may not fit here. So I've got this processing to do. But the bigger picture that I was really looking at based on this quote is, how will I modify my current courses and design new courses that promote equity, equality, and justice as I saw it or as I heard about it there? And then how will I embody these values in my work as a professor and a colleague at EOU? So those are my questions. So what now? I don't know. I'm still working on it. And that is all I had to present, and I'm open for questions at this time.
Thanks, Karyn. Hello.
Thank you.
Questions, anyone?
Karyn, I just really enjoyed listening to you pronounce Finnish words, and I wonder if you could just repeat the greeting that you said at the beginning again for us.
Hei kaikki. Tervetuloa. Hyvä päivä. Minun nimi on Karyn.
Thank you. Love it.
And I said, hi all. Hei kaikki. Hey is great. That means hi. And if you want to say bye, you can say, hey, hey. And that's easy. Kaikki means all. Tervetuloa is welcome. And hyvä päivä is good day, good afternoon. And then minun nimi on, my name is.
So you talked a lot about really positive things that you saw in the Finnish school system. Were there any things that you went away with, wow, that doesn't seem as positive to me?
Yes. I heard from the students that I was speaking to in the teacher prep program, one of them was from a very rural area. So I asked about that. Well, much of Finland is very rural, but I wanted to know about if there were similarities there to here. And I asked about that, and she was saying, I'm not going to go back there. I don't want to go back to rural. I want to stay in the city. It's more interesting. It's more exciting. Plus, you have to do so many more things. Just like in rural schools here, their teachers wear a lot of hats and they do a lot of things. And so I imagine that these lovely, lofty goals are probably inconsistently met across the country. But I will say that I was looking at one source that rated lots of different, it's like a human development index, and it looks at different things. And when I clicked on the part of the interactive map that showed Lapland, or up there in the north, and then on the part that said Helsinki, they rated the education better up north than they did in Helsinki, which was I thought was surprising. But it's just, I think that particularly if the national curriculum is so broad-based and so focused on more principles, then I'm wondering how education across the country might be consistent. It seems to be working well because they do have a 100% literacy rate and have for a long time. And they are their economic development has continued. They seem to be doing well there, except for they lost Nokia a while ago. But I don't know. I couldn't go to other places, but I'm guessing there's inconsistency. And the fact that at least one of the people that I spoke with was going through the teacher education program, but not because she wanted to teach. She just wanted that degree because she was going to go somewhere else and make even more money doing something. But teachers are well paid. They can live off of what they have.
I know you didn't get as far in your observation as you would have liked to, but since they're working on all this theory over there, did you observe any particular technique or anything that struck you in how they were instructing the children?
No, because the class that I spent the most time in, that wasn't just like a walkthrough, was the preparatory class, and it is a class for Finnish learners, and so I was seeing things there that we would do like in an ESOL classroom here to support language learning. So no, I didn't see that, and I also tried to get myself invited into one of the lecture classes by one of the faculty members, but she didn't take my hint, and I don't know if it's because she didn't want to or because she didn't know what I was saying. So there's part of that cultural piece, because there is a really big thing about not pushing yourself, not pushing for things, particularly from people you don't know well. So I didn't want to directly ask, hey, can I come to a class? Because it just didn't feel like the right thing to do in the time that I was there. So the answer is no, I'm sorry. I wish I did. Well, I guess to the classes that I was taking online, there were a lot of videos. One of the things I would say is, I don't know if a theory or a sense is that kids need that rest and playtime. It's so valuable for them. They believe that's a big part of what helps kids become autonomous, be able to take care of themselves, be able to do what they need to do. And I was watching one of the videos in the early childhood course, and they were showing these itty bitty little ones that are barely walking, and they've got a spoon in their hand because they're being taught how to serve themselves from the buffet style lunch that they get, because they're supported to do that. Like this, there was a teacher holding the hand and helping that child do that, but the voiceover was saying that as soon as the child can do it on their own, the teacher steps back. So as soon as they can handle something by themselves, the teacher steps back. And kids are outside all the time. I don't know how cold it has to be for them not to go outside. But I think it's colder than here, because I was watching all kinds of stuff out there in the snow. And also I saw kids out in strollers in the middle of rain and whatever. I didn't stay long enough for snow, but I'm sure they would have been out there.
So you mentioned that part of the teacher preparation was a master's degree, and in that the students were expected to conduct research, probably to defend a thesis, I would suspect.
Yes, I don't know exactly what format that takes, but I think it is like a thesis, yes.
Do you think that is a strength of their system? Do you think it's a divide between practice and theory? Do we think that there's something that we should be looking at in terms of what we do in our own teacher preparation here?
Yeah, I would say that one of the things that is striking about teaching in Finland is that you are, again, autonomous. You collaborate with others, you can develop curriculum, you create your own assessments, you can do all of this, you have the authority to do that because there's not somebody telling you what curriculum you're going to teach today. So they have that autonomy, and I think the research part of what they do helps them get to that theory of what is good for child development. The learning deeper about learning helps them to be able to make those kinds of decisions when they're in the classroom. But teachers have a lot of autonomy, and they also depend on a lot of collaboration between teachers at the same school. And they're given that kind of planning time. And at least in the places that I was able to talk about with people, I don't know if that's consistent everywhere. But that's what I learned. I think research is probably important, but we are always told that we're not going to have people who are going to come for a 5-year program necessarily. And in our MAT program, which is 1 year, so if you do a bachelor's degree and then do the MAT, it is 5 years. But you don't have time in that 5th year to do anything besides the learning to teach. But one of the things about having a 5-year program where they earn a bachelor's first and then they earn a master's is they come into the university in education. So they start out and they can start taking education coursework from the very beginning. So they do take 5 years to get through the whole program. It's spread out across all those 5 years.
So I'm curious, what do you think is the reason for their, such high international success rate for the education that they have? It sounds really interesting that there's not necessarily the connection of theory to practice during the preparatory program. So did you ever hit on why they're so successful?
I think it really has to do with the culture of the place. There's a great deal of critical thinking taught throughout school. They're taught to it kind of goes back to that word autonomous. They're taught to take care of themselves. They're taught to take care of others. They're taught how to handle themselves and make decisions, and they do that with a lot of critical thinking. And so I had the opportunity to look at a couple of the questions through one of the books that I was reading on that matriculation exam that comes. There is not a multiple choice question on that. You have to take multiple sections of it. And you have to take one in your mother tongue. You have to take a test in the other language in Finland. You have to take a test, and then there are like 3 or 4 or 5 other subjects, and you get to pick which ones you're going to take tests in. I think they take 5 exams. They're all essay exams, and the questions are ridiculous. I wish I had brought that book in with me. Asking an 18 or 19-year-old to answer those questions when I'm looking at some of our college students going, would they even know how to approach that? Because they're taught that they combine ideas and put things together and come up with information in ways that we don't teach our kids. But it starts really young. So, for example, like the kid helping himself from the food bar, the buffet bar, the voiceover was saying, well, if they don't eat everything they take, then they learn that, how to judge their hunger and take just what they need instead of more. So it's just a very different way of looking, and they're doing it from here, not starting in high school and trying to teach them how to do that then.
I'm curious, you went post-pandemic and what you may have observed there compared to here regarding interactions with folks and like even that buffet that you're describing, we saw a lot of that kind of thing go away. And it sounds like that's still happening, perhaps. So curious.
It was happening. I mean, there were very few masks. I didn't see people with masks very often. They went through it pretty bad, I think, at the beginning of the pandemic, and a lot of people got sick. So I'm guessing there was a lot of immunity going on around there. But I wasn't allowed in the country until I could prove that I had my current vaccines. I'd taken my test. I couldn't get into the country before I had done that. And so they were taking care to make sure people weren't bringing it in, but there didn't seem to be a lot of precautions being taken at the time. But it's also a place where you don't really talk to strangers. So you're not stopping somewhere and gathering in small groups to talk. People are only talking to the people they know, and there just isn't that kind of a sense of, as one person put it Finns don't talk unless they have something to say. So unless you begin that conversation with them, they're not going to have something to say to you. But if you do begin that conversation with them, they're very friendly and very helpful. And never once did I ever ask someone something or ask for help or talk with someone and have them not want to respond to me. It's just that they don't initiate necessarily. Anything else? There's a lot that's not here, a lot of things that I couldn't talk about because I only have this hour. But if you're ever interested in learning more, I can talk your ear off if you want to give me a call.
Thank you, Karyn.
Thank you.